I often get asked, are body corporates and school boards good experiences to have on your CV when you're trying to begin or advance your board career? The reality is, it kind of depends. I mean, there are certainly circumstances now where body corporates are really dealing with a lot of very complex business issues, dealing with a lot of, property assets, dealing with insurance, dealing with external lawyers, and so on, and dealing with a lot of key stakeholder groups. And the reality is that good body corporates, the meeting structure is very similar to a boardroom of director meeting. So it's got a lot of very, clear similarities. There's an agenda, there's a meeting, that takes place. You have different stakeholders around the table. Body corporates are renowned for being contentious. You can have a lot of arguments, a lot of self-interest can creep into body corporate environments. And, there's nothing that kind of can trigger an argument more than, people's personal property being affected, or people's finances being impacted. So, for example, when you've got to make decisions about, the property wasn't developed in the right way, and now we've got to do a correction, or we've got to invest, very significant funds into putting in new lifts or certain maintenance projects, and we don't have the funding for it, so we're going to have to ask, the constituents to all put their hands in their pockets. All these kind of issues can be very, very challenging to work through. So the reality is the experience is very valid. Okay, so first and foremost, it's valid, and you should be showcasing all sorts of experiences on your CV as you're trying to secure your first or second board seat. So that can include body corporates. It can include steering committees if you're working in the corporate workplace, and then of course school boards, and a lot of people are invited to serve on the school board. Again, school boards have their pluses and minuses. They can be contentious. You often have self-interest that can creep into the boardrooms, but the reality is schools nowadays are often managing quite significant assets, whether that be property. They're often trying to expand their footprint to provide more services to students. Keeping a good ethos in the schools is very important. Selecting the right talent to come into the schools to teach the students is critical. The board plays a very important role in all of those aspects, and it can be very, very rewarding work, particularly if you are steering a school board in the right direction, and obviously you might have children at the school at the same time. There's also, I think, a need sometimes on these boards, particularly, school boards, body corporates, sometimes to have someone independent, someone who doesn't have a property in the building, someone who doesn't have a child at the school. It can really work quite well if there's a little bit of a balance around the table and some level of independence. We've seen this happen with school boards up here in Queensland. We've had a lot of turmoil in some of the private school boards, and there's been a real requirement to bring in independent board directors who aren't connected to the constituents in that, sort of intimate way, didn't go to the school necessarily, don't have children in the school, influencing maybe the decisions that are being made in the boardroom. And you can get cliques in these boardroom settings. You can get, particularly with private schools, wealthy parents kind of congregating together and seeking to influence the boardroom decisions in a certain way. So, there's a lot of challenges, to be frank, but they are good experiences, and they can be very positive experiences, particularly if you've got good governance measures in place. Take a really good look at those settings before you accept. Do not necessarily accept thinking you're going to be able to solve the problems. When there has been boards like this that have had a lot of challenges over a long period of time, a lot of turmoil, a lot of fighting on the board, people being removed from the board, you want to be very cautious, because from your perspective, that might not be the best possible experience to take on board. But don't rule it out, and certainly by all means, if you do undertake those types of settings, boardroom settings, put it on the CV, make sure it's recognised, and collate the information as best you can so that you can showcase it, and it may be the thing that helps you get your first board seat.